I originally got started with blindfold games because I was watching my daughter, who was not vision impaired. As a matter of fact, before I started blindfold games, I had never met a visually impaired person before in my life. And what I noticed, my daughter, when she was 11 years old, just before her birthday, about a month before her birthday, she was writing a new birthday wish list every single day. And she'd write the list with what she wanted as her top priority, and the next one. And then Tuesday would come by, she'd rip up that list and start the list over and over again. And I thought, there should be an app for that, a way that kids can come up with their birthday wish list to show their parents. So I worked with a local middle school, and the head of school came to me and said, Marty, the app club was great. Could you run it again? And by the way, after you drop your daughter off in the mornings, can you teach the middle school class so that way it was accurate? So we teach the middle schools how to program, which I did. And I was kind of a volunteer teacher for about 2 years. But when the app club met again, the kids said, we don't want to build a stupid app. We want to build a game. And I said, look, I'm willing to put my programming talents to help build a game, and we can all design together, but I don't want to be like every other game in the App Store. And I finally said, let's do something that doesn't need to use the screen. And a little bit more brainstorming, and we decided, let's make a driving game for blind people. So we did this again as a STEM project, science, technology, engineering, and math, where we would design a game, a multi-level game that you would drive with your ears instead of your eyes. So as you can see in this screen, it's drive with your ears instead of your eyes. And the general way it works is, if the music, you steer your car with the iPad, steering right and left, just like it's a steering wheel. If you drive too far to the left, the music gets louder in your left ear. If you drive too far to the right, the music gets louder in your right ear, and then you turn back. And then you aim for prizes, noisy prizes like popping popcorn, and avoid obstacles like barking dogs. So I arranged for teens to come into the Miami Lighthouse for the Blind. The teens started playing it with their earbuds in and driving, and for the next 2 hours, they were totally engrossed in this game. Okay. And there was a 16-year-old girl who had been blind since birth, and she was playing the game and having a great time. And then when I kind of debriefed her afterwards, she said, I can't wait to play with my sighted friends. I'm going to so beat their butt. So somebody set me up at the Perkins School of the Blind to test it out with their teens, doing Blindfold Racer at Perkins School.
Let's go! Come on! Get over the brick wall!
I'm still on level 21.
And if you hear the rooster right in the middle, like you hear it right in both ears, that means you're about to hit it. Yeah, you gotta turn either left or right. Not good. It's not good.
So these kids had a wonderful time. So I knew there was something there that these kids were enjoying. So I decided, okay, it's good enough. Let me put it in the Apple App Store, which I did. And quickly, it shot up to the top of accessible apps and games in the App Store. It was the most popular app in the App Store in 2014, and they honored us with Developer of the Year in 2015. Having built that game, I start hearing from literally hundreds of blind people across the world who came back to me and said, can you build this, can you build that? But before I wanted to get into any of what games more to build, I decided on one of my trips up to Boston to visit with somebody who said, can you stop by the Carroll School for the Blind and talk to me in person? And this was Brian Charlson. He's married to Kim, who was the president of the ACB. So I kind of drove his house, and he lives about 2 blocks from the Perkins School. And waiting for me there are 4 visually impaired people, and they told me they were up all night playing Blindfold Racer so they could tell me what they liked and what they didn't like about the game. We sat there for another 4 hours discussing what's important in the game, and they told me it has to have a great soundscape, and it has to have a lot of physicality, and it has to be very intelligent. And at that meeting, Kim said, can you make a solitaire game for me? Then her husband, Brian, said, can you make a cryptogram game for me? So I started working on those games. I met Joanne Becker. She loved blackjack, so she asked me to make a blackjack game. Then I heard from Anna Dresner. She said, can you make a bowling game? Then I heard from Ken Downey. He said, can you do a video game like Frogger? Well, that's really hard, but I did an equivalent one called Hopper. So at this point now I had 6 games. And across all the games, I was starting to do casino games, action games, card games like solitaire, and puzzle games. So where that's led to now, here we are 4 years later, because I started this all in 2014. So at this point now, I have about almost a dozen card games. So you name a card game, it's probably in there, whether it's solitaire or rummy or hearts or Crazy 8 or Uno or Skibo. All those games are in there. Casino games. After I did blackjack, next thing people asked me was for video poker. And then I ended up doing roulette. And I just released a slot machine game and craps. And then finally, I started doing board games. The board game Clue. I did Othello, checkers, tic-tac-toe. This is a pyramid tile game. And of course, Monopoly. So chances are, if you have a game, it's already in there. Sports games. First one was bowling that I built for Anna. Then I ended up doing air hockey, basketball, baseball, a pool, shuffleboard, and skee ball. Everyone remember skee ball at the arcades? All the games kind of cute. Even in skee ball, when the game is over, you hear the little tickets being printed out. And I'll give you an idea of what these soundscapes look like in a minute. TV game show games, there was a lot of demand for those, and I'm always doing one about every 4 or 5 months. Do You Want to Be a Millionaire? Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, Name That Tune, Family Feud. It's all in there. Action games. Okay, this is really interesting. I would try to look for video games and figure out how to make an audio equivalent of the video game. Like in Pong or something like that, your head is the paddle, and you kind of hear it. So you move your phone left and right, and as you hear the ball come towards you, as long as you get the sound in the center of your head, that means the paddle will hit the ball and they'll bounce away. I have about 50 worldwide testers who are blind who help me both make sure the game is good and really test the game. And every time I produce a new game, it takes about 3 months for the game to go from conception to ready for my 10,000 game fans out there. It has to be designed from the ground up for accessible play. Double tapping the screen and those other things, that makes for a very slow game experience, okay? Which means a visually impaired person using voiceover is not going to have as much fun playing their game as a sighted person would, because theirs is much slower. So I said, the first thing I need to do is everything's going to be a gesture that's going to be swiping or tapping, that one gesture accomplishes what you want. So every game is gesture oriented, so it works as fast as possible. They all have to be very easy to learn, fully immersive in the audio, very customizable. I have a lot of game players who have limited mobility. They can't swipe a lot in different directions. They just want to be able to tap and do very limited mobility things, so that all the games have features to either slow the game down because they have cognitive limitations or mobility limitations that they need to work a little slower but still enjoy the game. So let me kind of give you a little demo of Blindfold bowling. Okay, so you can see it's the bowling alley environment. To play the game, you basically just swipe.
You knocked over 6 pins, leaving 4 pins standing. 1, 3, 6, 10.
Horse race basically is where you run your fingers on the screen like you're walking. The faster you move your fingers, the faster the horse is. You play this game usually with earphones. In your left ear, you hear one horse you're racing against. In your right ear, you hear the other horse. So I'll start the game.
In post 1, citation. In post 2, your horse. In post 3, Animal Kingdom.
Tap the screen to start the race.
And they're off.
So what I'm doing is I'm racing my fingers along the screen, and you can hear how my horse is going faster and faster. And as I slow down, stop, my horse is simply walking. So let me go a little into the science behind this. Every game of the 80 games has the same user interface, which means the experience is very consistent across all the games. The main menu, the setting screens, the help screens, all the same, and even the gestures in most of the games are all identical. So if you haven't played the game for 3 or 4 months, you can go back to it, and no matter what game it is, what you remembered about it or what you remembered on another game is the same. It applies across, so you don't have to go through a learning curve each time to play a game. What you know from a prior game is probably going to work. All the games work on a concept of incremental learning, which means as you move from level to level, I'll teach you another skill, and that skill is used moving ahead. Every game is designed to be accessible from the ground up. The games just feel right. They feel natural to play. You're never slowed down. And the gestures match the game design, so whether it's solitaire or baseball or a word puzzle, you're never searching for a button. Everything is just there ready to be played. There's a lot of physicality to some of the games. So when you're playing Pong or some of the other action games, you can actually sit in a chair, and by swinging your chair left and right, you can move what's happening in it. Or you can simply move the phone by moving your arm. Or if you have more limited mobility, you can set it to just have your finger operate the screen. At this point, like I said, about 10,000 people worldwide play the games. Average game player plays for about 30 minutes every day across some game. Several of the games now are being used by teachers of visually impaired and vision rehabilitation therapists. We have Bop Gesture. That was a collaboration with the Braille Institute. They were starting to see more and more seniors get familiar with mobile phones, not understand how to use these phones, being scared of them, and certainly not understanding voiceover gestures. So we said, let's build a game that's fun like the game Bop It that a lot of times you'll see at the schools for the visually impaired, but make it with gestures. So in the simplest version of Blindfold Bop Gesture, it simply tests you on two different gestures, tapping and swiping. And every time you swipe correctly, it gets a little faster. So it'll say tap, tap, swipe, swipe. And then it goes tap, 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 swipe, swipe. As you move from level to level, it starts adding now swipe up, swipe down, tap left, tap with two fingers. It keeps getting faster and faster as you move from level to level until you're finally at the highest level where you've learned enough gestures to even operate the rotor in VoiceOver. Again, I have a lot of different games, some for sonification and auditory processing, some for fine motor control, a lot for orientation and mobility. Every game runs on both the iPhone and the iPad. Just visit blindfoldgames.org. Thank you.